We begin in the United States, where the government has shut down for the first time in 6 years after a deadline to extend funding expired at midnight in Washington. Republicans failed to sway the necessary 7 Democratic votes in the Senate to keep the government running. Democrats have been demanding Republicans roll back budget cuts to health care and other services. In turn, the Trump administration threatened it could cut government jobs during a shutdown. Well, now hundreds of thousands of civil servants could face a temporary suspension of pay, while all non-essential operations are likely to halt. The last shutdown, and the longest in the U.S. history, happened during Trump's first term, lasting 35 days. Now, the blame game started immediately. Here is what both parties, Democrats and Republicans, had to say about the situation.
A few moments ago, Republicans once again rejected Democrats' proposals to avoid a shutdown, fix health care premiums, and spare Americans the calamity of skyrocketing through the roof health care costs. Republicans blocked it again.
This truly is a Democrat-owned, Chuck Schumer-owned shutdown. There's no negotiation. It's a shakedown when he asked for $1 trillion for 4 weeks. It's absurd.
Let's get more. We're joined by Tyson Barker, a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council focusing on relations between the U.S. and the EU. Welcome back to DW, Tyson. A U.S. government shutdown. What happens now?
Well, a lot of public posturing and hopefully some negotiations in the background. But what will happen for the government is basically a phased-in shutdown of particular services that are not considered to be essential. So a lot of services will continue. Medicare and Medicaid will still be paid. Social Security checks will still go out. The Veterans Affairs operations will continue. But eventually, parks will shut down. Non-essential services will start to close. There will be delays at airports, and the American people will start to feel the effects of the shutdown. So that is on top of the kind of political cacophony and the general optics from Washington. That's going to be the part where the American people start to feel the pinch.
There's a partisan blame game underway. Break down the positions for us, and let's begin with the Republican position, and in particular, Trump's position. What's he saying?
The Republicans want to basically pass what they call a clean spending bill that would basically extend funding levels at their current rates for the next couple of months. The Democrats want to use this one point of leverage that they have. Now, of course, Washington is completely controlled by the Republican Party, both houses of Congress, the White House, and the Supreme Court, that they see that this is their only point of leverage to make sure that they're reflecting their voters' priorities, and that the primary priority is extending a very complex but very important subsidy for premiums embedded in Obamacare to make sure that more insurance is available to about 4 million Americans generally. There is a statement by Republicans in the Senate that this will be done in any event, but really this is the only pinch point that the Democrats have to make sure that that actually happens. And the other thing about the Democrats, there are two things, really. One is they kind of want to see Congress take a more co-equal role in 2025, as it's stated in the Constitution, in the budget process. There has been something called a rescission, or rescissions that have been happening recently, where Congress has appropriated money and the president has just said, refused to spend it. And then Congress has basically ratified that refusal. The Democrats want to see that roll back, that process. And then finally, politically, they're responding to their base, which was very unhappy with the decision by Chuck Schumer and the Senate Democrats in March to extend funding to this point.
We mentioned that this is the first time in 6 years that there has been a government shutdown, but there have been some before. And Tyson, we've spoken about this in the past. From your observation, the way that you're seeing the different positions of the Democrats and the Republicans, how entrenched are these positions, and are we potentially facing a long shutdown?
I think that there is a lot of potential for a longer shutdown. I think that I guess the better question, which is your first question, is how entrenched are the positions? I think both sides, especially the Democrats, are really responding to their base. If you look at polling about favorability with the Democrats, it's at an all-time low. And the reason it's an all-time low has little to do with swing voters and has more to do with their base, which sees them as not standing up to the president, not fighting for Democratic priorities and Democratic voter priorities. And so they have a real strong incentive to make sure that this subsidy extension, which, by the way, is extremely popular among the American people generally, is actually delivered upon. So I think we are looking at a potentially longer shutdown. Obviously, President Trump is a kind of political brawler. He likes these kind of fights, and that's one of the reasons why the shutdown in 2019 was so long, historically long. So I think that both sides are pretty dug in, and we could be looking at a longer process. We know that the White House itself has said, be careful what you wish for. This could lead to permanent federal firings. That is a threat that they've had. A lot of federal civil servants live in Maryland and Virginia, two states that have Democratic senators and tend to vote Democratic. But the truth is that a lot of those firings have actually taken place through the DOGE process and some other reductions in force efforts that have happened in the past 8 months.
Tyson Barker, Senior Fellow at the Atlantic Council. Thank you, Tyson.
Thank you.